Hello, I'm so excited to be back with you guys and share one of my soul sisters who is my friend for so many years. I absolutely love Erica. I'm going to let her introduce herself. But I missed you guys. It's been a couple weeks. I admittedly had eye surgery and I am still recovering, and it's been quite a journey within itself. But I thought to myself, do I pause and not do this, or do I just show up and do the damn thing? And so I'm here, and I'm excited to be back. And so, Erica, I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell everybody what you're up to in the world as a healer and as this beautiful beacon of light that you always are.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And Dawn, you could do whatever to your face, and that gorgeous hair and that beautiful soul of yours will always shine through.
You're so sweet. Thank you, honey.
So I'm Arica Angelo. I am an intimacy expert for men, and I've been coaching men for 18 years now. And I run a YouTube channel where I give advice to guys, and they buy online courses from me to be better lovers for their women. And initially, I started this journey 18 years ago as a dating coach when there was no thing around really coaching and coaches, especially for personal development. So that was fun, introducing myself that way back in those days. And yes, over time, it's just my reach and what I share is grown and evolved. It took a path where I was even working with clients and doing some bit of trauma-informed inner child work, that sort of thing. And now it really pertains to intimacy. And I had a television show on Bravo. Yes, I was a matchmaker, and it was called Love Without Borders. And it was done by the same producers who produced Love is Blind.
Oh my God, that's so fun. I loved watching you on that journey. That was so fun. And you were incredible in it and just always looked amazing and just doing your thing. When it comes to intimacy, I feel like a lot of people might be like, okay, what exactly does that mean when it pertains to the work that you're doing? I'm curious. What does that mean to you?
So for me, it's all encompassing, but primarily what my work is right now, it's helping men be better lovers for women in the bedroom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Sizzle.
Yes, because it's very practical, you know. There's so much that can be said abstract, but when it comes to men need a very direct path. And I have learned that over the years that speaking abstractly does not work. They need it just black and white, plain and simple. And fortunate for me, fortunate for the men that come to me, that's my approach. My approach works well with men because I am very black and white, and I say things that are taboo and things that women would whisper behind the scenes to their girlfriends about what happens in the bedroom. And for me, it's always been something that I just say very bluntly, and it makes my girlfriends blush, and it makes men feel refreshed and safe. Like, wow, there's a woman who actually speaks kind of like a man and just tells us the direct truth. And those conversations need to be had. And so I feel like I'm the dark mouthpiece for women when they have these erotic desires and things, but they don't want to say them because they've been conditioned not to say those things. And I say, well, I'm going to say the damn thing because that's the only way things change.
I love that. And I would imagine saying the taboo thing probably takes a little, well, I know it's for you, it probably comes very naturally, but how did you get to that point where you could say those taboo things? Because I know you are very spiritual yourself, and I think it is a spiritual thing to tell the truth.
Yeah.
How did you get comfortable saying the taboo thing? Because I think so many women are probably going, ooh, I can't believe she's able to do that.
I think when it comes to intimacy, that for whatever reason, that was never a hard thing for me to talk about. Publicly, yes, but not because I'm a woman. It's because of my upbringing, growing up in a very religious home, growing up with ministers, being a minister at one point, married super young. I would say what my trepidation is in telling the truth about these things is not from being a woman, but more from a religious standpoint in that programming. So for me, when it came about sex, one funny story I like to tell is I was in the middle of church with a girlfriend and I was like, you know what? Damn it, my vibrator broke. And she was like, oh my God, Erica. And she's laughing
Yeah.
and she says, you can't talk about that in church. And I just thought that was the stupidest thing I ever heard. Not from my friend, but just that whole idea that intimacy is this. The fact that it is so taboo to me is very demonic. It's very dark
Yes.
because it's one of the most holy things that two human beings can do. But it is done in the dark. And so the language that you're going to be saying and the things that you're going to be talking about are very dark language. And there's
Yeah.
beauty in that darkness. And I think
Yeah.
that that's part of my message. And I think that part really brings liberation to a lot of people.
How did you, okay, so you have this church background. Did you say you were a minister?
Say that once more. I'm sorry. I had to switch ears.
Oh, that's okay. Did you say you were a minister?
Yeah, so I got married at 18. My folks really felt like God had picked out my husband very young, and being the young girl and coming from a background with generational trauma, I was like, yeah, of course that makes sense. And so my parents were ministers and they had me at 14. I was their children's church pastor. So I was teaching children. And then when I was married, I became a youth pastor. My ex-husband and I were youth ministers. And so I thought my journey was going to be, I was going to be a televangelist and I was going to travel the world and tell the world about Jesus. But even back in those days, my healing gifts were showing up. I was taking our kids at the time, even though they were teenagers, through inner healing work, even though I didn't know that that's what it was called. It was just downloads I was getting from God and saying, okay, we're going to do this exercise and we're going to press into like what is going on inside of our hearts and what God has to say about that.
Oh my God, Erica. I never knew that about you. I didn't know you were doing the youth group. And you know what's funny is I did the same in high school. Yeah, I was in high school. I was ministering to the junior high kids, the middle school kids. Yeah. And I remember it's so funny to look back because it's different and yet the same.
Yeah.
But it was the very thing that started to open me up to the healing and what's
Yeah.
possible. And yeah, I always look back at that time and I think it's just funny how it's morphed into what it is now. I feel like it opened me up in a lot of ways. So you were doing the ministering, and then I know there's a lot that's happened, but what led you to work with men? Because I'm so curious about that.
I feel like while my journey as an entrepreneur has been pretty brutal, I have to say I've been very fortunate that people have come across my path to go, this is what you need to do. It was as real as a friend. It was my gay bestie at the time, and he saw my approach and it just resonated more with men because I am very straightforward. I'm very blunt. I'm very like, okay, let's get to it. And I felt like with women, maybe I needed to be a bit softer. There needed to be a bit more hand holding, more coddling. And I was just like, yeah, I don't have time for that. This is what we need to do. And so it worked well with men. So my gay bestie said, look, quit effing around with women. Just focus on men. This is your bread and butter. Focus there. And it really was more effortless for me to work with men than with women. And I just think sometimes, it's just your path. And so while I love helping women when I can, there's just more flow, more ease with me when it comes to working with men.
I feel like I've worked with both, and sometimes for me with men, it's harder to crack the shell. Like I feel like getting in there. And sometimes, so it's either getting in there and cracking the shell, or it's like when it gets super vulnerable, keeping them like being to stay open. Like almost there's like this shutdown valve. And I think women have the same thing. I'm not saying that it's that different, but I've noticed for me with men, I do bring in a little bit more of that emotional kind of like, oh, like how I would talk to women, and they are just so different.
Yeah.
They literally respond differently to everything. So I found it to be sometimes more of a challenge because I haven't been as direct as you.
Yeah, and I'm still on the fence about when they say women and men are so different. I think we do have a lot of differences, but I think a lot of that is just societal programming where men have been really encouraged not to be vulnerable, to not share their heart. There's so much at stake for them to open their heart, which is just a prison in and of itself. I do think that women now in our modern lives are becoming more masculine in that regard. I see it in myself sometimes, being a single woman running my own company. I'm like, damn, Erica, that's a bit not so feminine, my mama. But I think it's just a lot of societal programming where vulnerability has been taught to men that it's just not a safe thing. But once they have that experience, they realize, shit, it's actually quite liberating.
Yeah. And you were saying you noticed in your own life that you were veering more towards the masculine.
Yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
what does that look like for you? Because I think a lot of women might be able to relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it really boils down to trauma. I think it's my own trauma that I've been healing for the past 25 years. And then I think a lot of it's to society. You know, as much as I love men, I have to be honest with the fact that masculinity is on a huge decline and that it's quite rare to meet a man who is super in his masculine. And you know, I see it I've lived all over the world, and before you could say, oh, it's this country, it's that country, and now it's just becoming more universal, which is really sad. And there's lots of reasons as to why that's happened, but the reality is it's happened and it needs a solution.
That is some big truth right there because I have noticed that as well. And I think that people get confused sometimes with what masculine versus feminine is. And I do always tell everybody we have both, right? We have
Yep.
both components. And it's how you're operating in your reality and which one that you're kind of leaning towards. And I have had many years in my life, especially in the past as an entrepreneur, where I was heavily in my masculine
Yeah.
and then had to kind of course correct because for me, when I was in that, I turned into like a little hustle robot where I was just like, go, go, go. I wound up getting like autoimmune issues because I wasn't listening to the feminine architecture of my body and the energetics. And I'm in a position right now where I feel like I have a pretty healthy balance, but I have a very masculine oriented partner. So it allows me to be in my feminine. But I know that I don't judge any kind of relationship. I think whatever relationship people are in is what's right for them.
Yeah.
But I do know that sometimes women are taking on the masculine energy and archetype in their relationships, and then they're wondering why they're not feeling met
Yeah.
and why they're always doing everything and they have to be in control of everything. Have you seen that when you're working with some of these men in the past?
I have to say the majority when I was doing coaching, more of my guys were single guys. This is just now from personal experience of just being a single woman out there because I don't really do a lot of coaching anymore. I'm entertaining getting back into it, but I stepped away from coaching, and so I just see it daily living out here in Europe and just seeing the dynamics, and I'm just like, man, I think the thing is we're all going to the same place, which is social media, so you're getting to hear stories all around the world, and the stories all start matching, and you're like, damn, this is really. But you can feel it as a woman, you know, like when I have been in a relationship, it's like, why am I always stressed and why am I needing to do that? And it's like, because I'm leading and this guy's not leading. And I do believe like that ultimately, despite what men say, I still think it's men's responsibility to take the driver's seat in that. And I don't buy into the, well, women just need to soften. And I'm like, that is such a gay thing to say. Why on earth would you say that? No, it's your job. Yes, society has done a number on you, and I acknowledge that. And I hate that that has been your experience as a man. But regardless, you have to step up. Your woman needs that from you, period. And when he does do that, that's where the feminine goes, okay, he's stepping up, he's leading. I have to soften in that and allow him to do what he does. And I have to meet him there. But if he feels like he's just constantly going to war with you, then he's not an idiot. He's going to say, okay, like, enough. As Italians say, basta, fini. They're done. They're not going to do it anymore. So I think it requires the man to initiate, but then as a woman, we have to understand that that responsibility to us to also soften.
Have you found personally when you've been in relationships that it's hard to soften after you've been running your company? Have you found that it's a little bit challenging to leave that behind and then come into the relationship and be like, okay, now I'm going to let him lead?
I actually was really fortunate that my last partner was really good at communication. He was really good at holding space. So he actually made it much easier for me to surrender. And he would see me kind of step back into that, and he would just call it out and be like, he would make jokes about it or say, you're being super impatient right now. I remember one time him just going, "Why are you so impatient?" And so it was nice to have those gentle call outs and go, okay. So I think having a great partner helps.
Yeah.
I did somatic work for 5 years, and being able to regulate myself was a game changer. And it also shows you very quickly when you can regulate yourself and you can go, oh, wait, that other person is choosing to be that way. Oh, yeah, I don't want any part of that. Like, I don't need to entertain that. Like, that's something going on in you, and you can either handle it or not, but I'm not going to be a participant in that.
Yeah. So you did the somatic work, and that has helped you be present in your body. And it sounds like it gives you more awareness as to how you're showing up or how the other person is showing up.
I didn't say it that way, but you nailed it.
I'm like, that's kind of what I heard.
No,
But
you nailed it. I'm like, I love the way I can just throw random stuff out, and you have this gift of just putting it in this beautiful, cohesive framework.
you're so sweet. I know somatic work makes such a difference for people. Is that something that you've brought into your, because I know you're doing more teaching now,
Yeah.
but is that something that is part of the sexual things that you're teaching?
Absolutely. Because, as much as men love the very practical, like, what do I get to do? The reality is, I always say, I can teach you every trick and the trade of what to do in the bedroom. But if she does not feel safe with you, nothing is going to last. And I talk about that safety comes from your energy and your presence. And are you regulating yourself? Is your nervous system regulated? Because she's going to match you there. And so that's been a big part of my work. And it's been really fun to be able to just take something that I think most men would have found in the past is very woo-woo, and just making it super practical of like, very caveman, like, look, you don't do that, you don't get that. So what you want to do.
I love it. Yeah, no, I mean, it's so true, because I think that women, in order for us to let our guards down, we do need to feel safe. And
100%.
everything's this energetic conversation that's happening, even though we don't realize it. And
Yeah.
it all starts with how we feel in their presence.
Yes.
I always feel that. Like with my husband, he's solid with his energy and he's extremely present. And so I can just, it's almost like sometimes I feel like I can like melt into his because I just feel safe. And I'm like, no matter what kind of day I'm having or whatever's going on, I'm like, okay, this is a safe harbor. And that leads into all the other things that are going to happen throughout the rest of the day. Because I always believe that intimacy isn't just that moment in the bedroom of sex. It's how we're showing up from the way the day gets started and how we're creating that safety and sustainability throughout whatever's unfolding that day.
I released a course, it's called the Date Night Pleasure Bundle. And I say just that because I would get men emailing me and saying like, I love these courses, but she doesn't want to do anything. And I'm like, well, there's a reason why she doesn't want to do anything, because you can't just show up at 9:00 and expect her to turn into this sex goddess who's like, yes, let's just do all the wild things. No. That is something that gets established as soon as the two of you wake up, and how you build that momentum, that safety, anticipation throughout the day.
Yes. What are men struggling with the most right now? Like what courses are getting bought the most, or what's the biggest struggle that you're seeing? I'm so curious because I feel like I want to be like a fly on the wall.
Dawn, I don't want to tell you what courses they're buying from me. I don't know if it would resonate
Okay,
with your
the
community.
naughty courses. Is it just like naughty sex courses?
It's very practical of what to do, because that's the reality is there's a big disconnect, because when a man and a woman are being intimate, there's this story that we have as a woman that when you show up to touch my body, I expect you to know what to do. When we're intimate, I expect you to lead, and I expect you to know what to do. Well, here's the problem. Who's teaching them this? Porn? Okay, well, that's toxic, and that's worse than heroin. So there's that. And then who else? You think their dad is saying, hey, son, this is how you give your wife oral, or here's how you give your... So nobody's teaching. So there's this huge disconnect. You have a lot of men who feel comfortable sharing this, but I'm like, But you're a man. Like, you don't know what it feels like to have a vajayjay. You don't know what it feels like to have breast. You don't know what this feels like. So, I mean, kudos to you that you had some success, but I'm a woman with those body parts. And I may speak about things in general, like every woman's body is going to be different. But if you have some practical techniques, and so, yeah, men will send me emails and say, I bought this course that taught me how to do that. And my wife is looking at me and going, who are you? And it's revolutionizing marriages. It's taking relationships to the next level because of practical pleasure. But Dawn, if you had told me as a youth pastor when I was 18, 19 years old girl that I would be doing this, I would have said absolutely not. Because back then I didn't know my own body. Like, I remember being married and not knowing where my button was down below, and we were reading a book and I'm like, so to go from that to doing this is just, sometimes I'm left scratching my head going, God, why are we on this journey?
Well, I love that it's so spiritual for you
It's
because
super
I know
spiritual.
you personally.
Yes.
And I know that everything you do is through the lens of spirituality, God, Jesus, everything.
Yes.
And for you to be the one facilitating and teaching this for these men, it's, yes, it's like a very practical thing, but it's also what you're saying, it's revolutionizing marriages because all of a sudden this thing that might feel, I don't know, like odd or I don't know,
Awkward.
hard to connect, hard to know what to do. You're making it simple and giving the instructions so that there can be this deeper connection, which is the intimacy that you were talking about. And I think you're hitting on something that I know a lot of our women listeners will probably relate to is that, well, for both actually, men and women, but I'm going to speak to the women. We are not taught to be in these bodies, like be really embodied and be like, okay, how do I know what pleasure feels like in me? We are taught to use our bodies to find pleasure for other. When we're younger, that's like the cultural programming, at least it was for me. And I remember I went to a retreat called the S Factor. I don't know if you remember that, but it was maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. I believe that her name was Sheila Kelly. She leads this whole retreat, and it's based on pole dancing. You're just learning kind of like the art of that. There's no men at the retreat, obviously. It's all for women. And I remember I signed up because I was super intimidated. I was like, okay, this is scary territory for me. And the thing that was the most uncomfortable and strange for me was she said, you're going to dance, but for nobody else's pleasure but your own. And you're going to be in your body and feel your body. Like, she gave us a feather to feel our bodies. And she was like, you get to learn the sensual map of your own body. And I'm like, what is she talking about? Because I had never thought of it as this is my, I always thought this is a temple, but I never even took it further than that. It was just like, okay, this is my temple. I got to take care of it. And I was thinking of it more from a health perspective. And spiritually speaking, I know that my temple let in some energy that wasn't good for me. When I was in a toxic relationship, for instance, I know that that wasn't helping me feel good about the intimacy and connection that I had. So a lot of this, when I went to that S Factor retreat, it was so fascinating to feel, so she calls it your own turn on. And I realized as a woman, I was like, God, I think a lot of women skip over this step. We don't know the map of our bodies like maybe we should, so that when we are in a relationship, because you're saying something really interesting. You're saying you have to instruct these men, which means the women do not feel comfortable telling their men what they need. They're not being instructional themselves and saying, hey, like if you tried this or did that, this might feel good. And it's a spiritual journey between a husband and wife or a boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever, if you allow it to be, right? And I know I'm going in a lot of different directions, but that piece around even women not knowing what they need or want.
You said so many powerful things, and I think one from the get-go, we're actually empowered to be disassociated from our bodies. You're not skinny enough. You can't fit in this new trending outfit. There's so much. You need this makeup. You need these extensions. You need these new shoes. You need that new bag. Everything is external. You need something that you don't already have, which speaks to a woman's beauty identity of I'm not enough, I'm not beautiful enough. And that just creates immediate disassociation. And so when we come to being intimate, it's such a powerful portal. And I think it's a spiritual experience, whether you're conscious or not, it's happening because it's the one thing that God has designed. When we're created in God's image, he said, I'm going to give you this opportunity. And he used our genitals to say, you're going to use these two parts and you are going to create an entire new life with these parts. If you can think of the magnitude and the majesty of that, these were the two portions that God said, this is what I'm using. And the two become what? They become one in that moment. And so it is such a divine, mystical union that we encounter, whether we're conscious of it or not. We are co-creating in that moment with our bodies. And I believe that there's lots of portals that get activated when we are intimate. And I find it quite interesting that no matter what religion you look at, in the majority of religions, especially our most popular religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, most of the time, sex is really demonized. And I believe that that is a control structure, because it's like, because if we're made in the image of God and God has put herself inside of us, and then we access each other's God and one another through this mystical union. And if that gets demonized, then once again, that creates what? So there's a lot of separation that goes on, I think, very strategically. But yes, my goal is to just demystify it and to make it very practical. And to your point, women are not telling their men this. And I tell men, they say, well, if women would just tell me, and I say, well, one, I'm the woman that's going to tell you what your wife, your girlfriend, your church, your dog won't tell you. I will tell you all those things. But the reality is, I said, you have to understand, a woman's programming has been taught to be nice. That is everything that we're taught as a little girl. Be nice. And guess what? If I tell you, hey, when you do this to me, I don't like that, guess what? I'm not being nice in that moment. And I've been also conditioned that you're super fragile and that I can break your ego like that if I tell you the wrong thing. And so it's this whole subconscious programming that's going on inside of a woman that separates her from her voice, and then it separates her from her pleasure. But no, if women were just telling their men, babe, I really don't like that, I prefer this, you wouldn't need me. But so that's a huge thing, is that women are not telling their men very honestly about what works, and not just what works, but actually what they want, what they really want. I'll never forget, I tell this story to my guys all the time. I had a girlfriend, very granola kind of girl. And I remember her saying to me once, she said, I just wish my husband would just come home and just me. And I was like, I kept my composure, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that. But my mouth was on the ground, because this woman is like just so granola, so cookie cutter. And to hear those words come out of her mouth, and I thought, wow, if she's feeling that frustration, then a lot of women who are, being a good girl in bed actually want other things to be encountered. I always tell men this. I say, don't listen to what women say, listen to where they spend their money. And there's a reason why 50 Shades of Grey and Magic Mike and all of these, and the Twilight series, all of these things are so successful, is because it speaks to those dark desires in a woman. And when I say dark, I don't mean in a negative sense. I mean, that polarity of her, that yes, she's got the very soft side, but then she also has another side that's very wild and erotic, and that is holy, and that is beautiful.
Yeah, and if a man can learn how to unlock that, then their intimacy and union is going to be that much stronger.
Yes.
And so I love that, because I agree with everything that you said. And I think that there is so much cultural programming of, like you said, how we're supposed to look, and then what we're not supposed to say, and to be the nice girl and the people pleaser. And I was just telling my husband this, that maidens to mothers to crones, right? And crones now, I think there should be like another word in between. They have a new word that's called the enchantress, right? So between mothers and crones is the enchantress, where she's not childbearing anymore, but she's not quite crone, so she's in between. And I consider myself there. But anyways, the hormone profile of a maiden is the people pleaser. They're a little bit more submissive. They're more like malleable, right? Into who they are. And then the mother's hormone profile is very much about nurturing and caretaking, because you have children and you have to make sure that you're meeting their needs. And then somewhere between enchantress and crone, the hormone profile changes. And I'm seeing this mass of online and social media of women being like, I'm done with keeping my mouth shut. I'm seeing women that are in 40s, 50s, and beyond going through menopause, because that is a thing of like the crone and that enchantress time, is I'm going to speak my mind. I've kept my mouth shut all these years, and I've never told anybody what I want. And I'm seeing divorces, and I'm seeing them go after what they want sexually.
Yeah.
And I find it really fascinating. And so I think there is something very biological to this. And I also think it's societal word. Imagine if a maiden or mother was taught, like, you are allowed to ask for what you want. You don't just have to, you're not just this, but our biology and chemistry is very different than when we're older. And we're just like, I don't give two F's anymore about these things. So I'm going to just speak up and say what's on my mind.
And believe it or not, most men, I would say a healthy man, unless you have a guy who's really just tapped out of his masculinity, but most men actually really appreciate that. They're like, finally, you freaking tell me. Now I can get to business. They just need instruction, but most women don't give that. But if you could just give your man instruction, just be like, look, this is actually what I want. And listen, I want to try this and I want to play with that. And I'd like this to be a little bit harder, more soft, or make this last a little bit longer. All of those conversations, man, they're super necessary.
Yeah, I think it makes all the difference. And I think that's too sometimes why younger men like older women.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a weird phase I'm in right now. I'm like, where are these 20-year-olds? And I'm in my mid 40s, and I'm just like, this is so bizarre. But that's what they
Right?
say. Women in their 40s are more vocal, they're more this, whereas the girls our age, they don't have a lot of depth and they're figuring things out. And women in their 40s, they have it figured out.
Well, they're in a different place hormonally. And so I can understand, but I'm so curious with your journey with relationships and dating. How has that kind of bridged for you? Because I know that you are so wonderful working with these men and helping them.
Yeah.
But for you personally, how are you right now with all the relationship stuff? What is your outlook and perspective on it?
In terms of where masculinity is, where I am personally.
You personally, like
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
I feel very, and I've felt this for a while, very frustrated with masculinity. I've been feeling it. I moved to Bali in like 2018. I've been gone from the States since then. And I think when you're in this work, you start picking up on it a lot sooner before it gets to the masses. And I've been feeling this frustration since then. And so right now, my heart really is like, when I see a man being very masculine, is to really go out of my way to celebrate them and champion them. Like, I've even thought of doing just a little series on my Instagram of like asking women to tell me about their husbands so that I can feature one of their husbands and be like celebrating them, because I think we all know that right now masculinity is on a pretty big decline. And so nothing champions us more than when we speak to love. And so I could say all day how I'm frustrated with the state of masculinity, and it personally annoys the F out of me when I see, like, I live in the Monaco area, and today, like, you'll see the guys walk by and they just think they're the catch, and they're walking around as princesses, like little cats, and they look at the girls and then they look away, and I think, honey, where are your balls at? And it's such a turnoff. And I just think, no, if you're a man, you will hold my gaze and you will be strong in that you don't need to look away and you don't need me to chase you. And I think that men have become kind of princesses and wanting to be chased, and it's so foul. It's super foul.
Oh, interesting.
I
So
even
why?
saw it at a grocery store the other day. This poor woman, she had a huge, massive diamond on. She had a little girl. There was a dog, and there was a husband. He was just chatting away on the phone, and she's got groceries everywhere. She's managing the girl, and the husband was just holding the dog. And she's just like, "Can you help me?" And he just like walks off. And I just thought, oh man, you know that saying that everyone's saying now, may this love never find me. It was so just rattling to me to see that. And of course, I gave him a very awkward stare, like, you're okay with doing what you're doing?
Yeah. Because I'm not obviously out there and I don't see all of that. And I know I do see on social media that masculinity, like testosterone, is way down. And I always look at it from a spiritual healing perspective. And I think spiritually, why is it that men are the diets, the nutrition, all these things are catering towards them being more in their feminine physically?
Right.
I find that really fascinating. And then I ask myself, why is it that way? Right. And how do we shift it so that, because we want our men to lead. I mean, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I know at least I do.
Yeah.
But why do you think what is this phenomenon that's happening?
I think it's a mismatch. Listen, I love Botox more than the next girl, but for a woman, it's like, yes, I need to fix the external. And so I'm going to do Botox. I'm going to do all these things to fix my external, but we bypass the heart. And it's like, actually, no, my heart needs to be healed. I think it's the same thing with masculinity. It's a bypassing of, oh, I need to take care of myself. And it's like, yeah. Not just the external, it's your heart. And I think it's like we've come to this place of this awakening where it's like, it's that awakening of the heart. And so for men, it's like they've been so disconnected, desensitized from their hearts. And it's an opportunity to come into that, which is a feminine experience.
Yes.
But the mark is being missed. It's going, just like for a woman, you know, it's like, I think we can become acutely aware when we get too wrapped up in the external to go, okay, it's getting too far that way. Like, what am I not paying attention to here? But we've been given that framework. Men have never been given that framework to go, oh, you need to look at what's inside. Since when? That's a new conversation. And I think they're just going over the mark. It's going very external as opposed to, no, in this awakening, it's an awakening of the heart. And so you got to come back here. And that's going to require vulnerability and it's going to require courage. And so I do see some men who are doing a good job at that, like Lewis Howell. I think he wrote a book about how he was sexually abused. And I really love that because when it comes to masculinity, someone has to go first to lead this. And so you do have men who are out there doing that. But I think most men want to bypass that and go the easy route and just say, no, I'll just biohack my way through this. And it's like, you can't biohack the heart. It's like the Brian Johnson guy right now, the guy who longevity, who now has autoimmune disease. And it's like, well, yeah, you can't biohack your trauma. And you can't biohack a heart that's lived a life filled with trauma. You have to address that. And so I think that that's where it's going. It's like, yes, there's this portal open for men to step into that feminine of addressing things in their heart and being vulnerable and doing the healing work that can feel feminine. But once as we all know, once you get into that, then it's quite warrior-like. It's quite, every woman has to step into her masculine when she's doing that heart healing. It's like, first it's like the invitation is the crying, and then you go to war. It's a battle cry of fighting for your heart. And so I think that men, you know, they've really missed the mark on that. And we have this great opportunity to balance that out between masculine and feminine, but it requires courage.
And what I hear you saying is it's entering into the deeper work, not staying on the surface, and really being able to go into the territory of the heart where all those shadows and skeletons live of our past and our trauma, and making sure that that is dealt with so they can be more in their bodies, right? And be more of who they really want to be. Same with women. It's not neither one is excluded from that kind of work. But I'm so curious, as a woman that maybe isn't a partnership, like if a woman is listening and she has a boyfriend or a husband and she's like, okay, yeah, how could I? It's not that she's supposed to fix, because I don't believe there's any fixing, but how could she support her partner in going deeper, do you think, in accessing more of that intimacy?
It's two things. It's leading with the posture of curiosity and saying, hey, I wonder if this is a thing. So you're not the doctor, you're not trying to fix him, but I wonder about this. And I think this is, I won't say for all women, I'll just say for myself that this becomes very hard. It's easy for me to do with clients. I have to actually, no, let me give myself some credit because I've grown. Because in my last relationship, I did do this. It's leading with curiosity, but when that door is open and they ask for truth, you gotta effing give them the truth and don't sugarcoat it. Because men, while we need sugar, we're, like the dogs where you put the medicine and the cheese. Sometimes when a man does open the door, he needs the pill. He needs, just tell me the actual absolute truth. And when it comes from the posture of love, like, baby, I love you, but you've been running from this for far too long. And it's showing up like this in XYZ. And I can see the anxiety. I see the trepidation. Baby, you got to do something about this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I love the curiosity, like staying in the question. And also something really important that you said is not trying to fix them.
Yeah.
Not trying to like be their mothers or their teachers or coach or, healer even. Just really giving that truth and being more of a reflection or a mirror so that they can hear it and then they can decide what they want to do with it. Because I think that's a dangerous place to be in a relationship, is when a woman starts to take on that like unconscious mother role of, oh, I see this in you and let me try and fix this or heal this in you. And it's like, that's not really our place. The healing takes place through just being a loving partner in the mirror.
Yeah. The mirror effect is huge, and I think it comes back to regulating yourself, what we were talking about earlier. When you regulate yourself, you can feel that overextending, that overreaching of, now I'm trying to maneuver and fix this situation, and it'll put stress on your body. And when you start feeling that stress of like, this doesn't feel good, that's your sign that you've overstepped your boundaries. You've gone outside yourself. And sometimes we just have to be curious. And if they ask for truth, give them the truth. And then you have to let God go from there.
Yeah. I know something that's been really challenging for me is the discomfort that comes once I speak the truth.
Oh, it's the worst. I
The
hate
worst.
it. I hate it.
It's like I'm going against my old programming, right, of being a people pleaser. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to, like, because I am at a point in my life where I speak truth with, and I'm talking about my intimate partner. Obviously, in work, I'm very much a truth teller. But when it comes to my own relationship and my own ability to be vulnerable, I'll say the truth. And I make sure it's like not, it's a clean truth. It's not like coming from past things. Okay, I've already sat with it and I know it's that truth, at least for me. And then I put it into the container of our relationship. And then I have to sit there and be like, okay, I can't go back and retract that. I can't fix it. I can't micromanage how he's going to receive it. And I just say all this out loud because I think women, that part is just as hard sometimes as telling the truth, is sitting in the discomfort and being like, okay, I can trust this relationship enough. I can trust the healing enough that this person can receive that and then do what they will with it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very uncomfortable because, for me personally, it shows up in my body, like, especially in my chest. I'm like, well, I don't feel good. And sometimes I have to just go and do somatic work for myself after I've shared I have to shake it out, or I have to like, okay, Arica, tap it out, or, the self-soothing. I'm right here. I know that was scary. Like, you did a great job. And I don't know about you, but one thing I notice I do is even with friends, like I just had to send a very truthful message to a friend who asked for some feedback. And I was like, let me just replay on WhatsApp. What exactly did I say?
I do the same thing sometimes.
And then I have to champion myself. So it's like this process. At first, my whole body just freaks the F out and I have to shake it out, then bring myself back to safety. And then listen to what I said or replay what I said. And then I have to like champion myself and be like, Arica, You use your voice. It's almost like that reparenting. You use your voice. I'm super proud of you. That took a lot of courage. You had every right to say what you needed to say. I love when you share your truth, and but for me, doing that becomes a whole journey for me sometimes.
It's such a gift to the other person, but it does require you to be grounded within yourself to stay the course, because it would be just as easy for you to be like, I'm going to delete that, or be like, I'm going to withdraw that message, or go back and be like, I probably have even said this to you. We were truth tellers for each other in mirrors, and I'm like, I hope that didn't hurt or land in a I'm always like, especially in my dear friendships, like how the truth will land. But the person, and I know you and I are both about consent.
Yeah.
We're always like, can I speak this to your heart? Like, are you open to receiving this and having that consent? Because that makes I think that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. I think everyone has their gift. I remember last year going through a dark night of the soul, one of many, and you were a big catalyst in that, telling the truth to me and saying, Arica, you're really in your maiden energy. And I just cried for about a month after hearing that. And I was like, damn, that's so true. And then I had another girlfriend follow up, and I told her the scenario that had happened. And she goes, damn, bitch, you toxic. And she had a different path. And that is kind of how she tells the truth to people. She said it saved people's lives. Like another girlfriend of hers was like, I'm thinking about not doing this with this guy. And she just called her out straight up. She said, listen, if you walk away from this guy, I'm sorry, but you need to go sit your ass in more healing, because this is a good man. And if you walk away from him, this is about you. It's not about him. And she married the guy, but she was this close to walking away from him. But it's like back to that. And that's, I voice memoed with you, like that's a journey that is very uncomfortable of just telling the freaking truth. And I think I'm not going to say all women, I would say women in America, it's very hard. I have Italian girlfriends out here, and they could give two shits about telling you the truth. They will tell you the truth, and I'm like, woo, that's really refreshing and a lot to take.
You are an intimacy expert. And I believe that when we are practitioners of something, we practice it in many different ways. And you are so beautiful with intimacy, and you know how to get into those nooks and crannies and tell the truth. And I think it's an art. And I think that a lot of people, when they think of intimacy, they don't think about delivering maybe the thing that could change somebody's life or help them when they're asking, of course. They're like, oh, I'm stuck in this relationship. Like, what do you see, or what's happening? And most people want the thing that's going to help them feel validated, or not having to see something within themselves, right? They want that really soft landing.
Yeah.
And the kind of truth that changes lives is going to be disruptive sometimes, or just hard to sit with. And you are somebody that I know, like in your work, because you're able to sit with yourself. All this somatic work that you're talking about, that you've done on yourself, is what makes you such a good teacher and practitioner to teach others. Because if you can't, that saying, you can only go as deep with others as you're willing yourself. Mm-hmm. And you're able to really usher in, and like, I feel this whole conversation, people get to really see what intimacy is. Mm-hmm. Because it's not just sex, right? Sex is a tool to have it. Intimacy is closeness, and it's heart connection, without always trying to stay safe, which is odd, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's telling the truth. The whole premise of my work is I'm just a woman who tells them the truth. And if their partners were doing that, then they would, I wouldn't say they would never need to buy my courses, because they're very practical, and for a woman who doesn't know her body, it would be great to have someone just lay it out for them. But the whole art of my work is just telling men the truth. And I'm seeing this more, to your point, in my own personal life. And it's hard. It's really hard. Like, as a woman who may come across as very strong right now, sometimes telling those truths are really hard, but it changes the trajectory of a person's life. I remember being in a relationship for 4 years that was pretty toxic, and I couldn't leave. And I'll never forget, my girlfriend has a husband who just says things. And I was attending their wedding, and he said, well, where's your partner? I said, I disinvited him. We're having some challenges. And he said, you guys have the most volatile relationship.
Oh my gosh.
And that punch and that mirror, and I told my partner, I said, he said, we have a very volatile, he was like, oh no, it's just passion. And I said, no, this doesn't feel like passion. This feels like volatility. Him telling that truth helped me make a decision to walk out of that relationship and to stay out of that relationship. And so I think that's something that has been browbeaten out of women, is to not tell the truth. I mean, if you even think about it, like, how freaking weird is it where if you're in your car and you don't feel safe and a guy walks by that you don't feel safe, like, most women would not hit the lock button on their car because they don't want to hurt the man's feelings. They don't want to insult him. They don't want a racial profile, that whatever. Yeah, and then when he rips you out of the car, you're like, damn, I wish I would have hit that button. But it shows up in every area of our life, and to walk out of it requires a ton of discomfort.
Yeah, and it's a practice.
Yeah.
And I think it's one that requires a lot of awareness and discernment. And it's something I continually practice, because I lived many years where I was in a relationship where I didn't, it's not that I couldn't tell the truth, it's like there wasn't the capacity for it to be heard. And there was a big unsafety. It was unsafe. Yeah. It was just like, it was very unsafe to tell the truth because it was a very toxic, emotionally abusive relationship. And so I remember swallowing my truth a lot, or holding it in my body, because I thought, well, it's not safe and it's not going to be received. Because when I did try and do it, it didn't work.
Right.
And I know now the consequences of that. That made me physically ill. And that's, if you get like one thing, there's many things in this beautiful conversation we've had, but like one thing to really take away is, if you can at least tell yourself the truth, start there, right? Start telling yourself the truth. Like those little white lies we tell ourselves, oh, I'm happy with this. But when you're really not, right? Just own up and tell yourself what you're really feeling. And then you can start to practice it with other people. And then over time, your life really starts to shift dynamically, because when you live your life that way, the inevitable kind of consequence or result of that is things just start to move, and you start to kind of like get to have more of the life that you really want. Because when we lie to ourselves, we're telling ourselves we're okay with something when we're really not. So it is, and it is intimacy. It is into me. I see the truth. I can love myself, and then I can give that out into my external reality.
Yeah. That's powerful.
Yeah. Okay. I love you, and I could talk forever, but where can people find you? And do you have anything right now that you want to share that you're doing?
Yeah, I think for women, if you have a man in your life, I have a program. It's called my Date Night Pleasure Bundle. I think every man needs to have access to that program, because if there's a big disconnect, if your body's not feeling safe, or you're just feeling that disconnect, that awkward, like, okay, we've gone to dinner and now he expects something. If you feel that tension in your body, I highly encourage you. It's on my website. It's Arica Angelo. Arica's with an A. So Arica, aricaangelo.com. And if your bedroom needs some spicing up, I have a YouTube channel, 257,000 subscribers, something like this.
That's amazing.
If you want to spice up your bedroom, go there. But it's pretty gnarly, some of the things I say, so just be prepared.
I love it. Well, they get to see you here, and then they can see the energy and the love. I love the fact that you're so comfortable with yourself that you're able to really teach men these things, because it's important. Yes. And I really appreciate having you on, Arica. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me, sis.